introduce our first speaker, Karine Cardona-Smits from Forrester, who's based in sunny Amsterdam, is a true expert on customer experience, broadly speaking, but also on the role of new technologies and how they are impacting the customer experience overall. And she will be speaking about the opportunity for customer experience differentiation. So with that, I leave the floor to you, Karine, and go on mute.
Thank you, Ronan, and hi everybody. Thank you for joining this session today. So let me share my screen as well, so we can get started. And as I mentioned, there's one aspect on customer service that is actually fascinating me, and it's not so much its trends in new technology or innovation. It's more the human aspect of it. And I'm going to share with you recent research on how human customer service is, for me, the overlooked opportunity for CX differentiation. And as we want to make this session as interactive as possible, there's a first little poll that will come your way here with a very simple question. Sam, if you could help with that, because it's very hard to juggle from one screen to another. So please use the polling, and there will be another one at the end of this session before the Q&A, so we can then discuss and take your questions from there. First one is really simple. I'm curious to know what channels your customers are primarily using to contact you today. Let's give a couple of seconds for everyone to answer. And we might be able to see some results. There we go. So phone seems to be still the main channel of communication. And that's also what we see in Forrester's data research. So when I talk to customers about customer service, very often what I hear is about costs. And this is not very surprising, right? When you think about digital transformation, with digital transformation, volumes do not go down. They tend to go up, and they might be going up in today's situation. So it's not very surprising that with more volume, you need more resources to handle them. So more resources, more costs. So that's basically what we hear on customer service. And this reminds me of that parachute game. Some of you might remember that game. You were this little character rowing from left to right to get the parachutes that were coming your way. And the more you progressed, the faster the parachutes were coming, and the more parachutes you would getting. And to prevent them from getting eaten by sharks, you would start to be super tensed on that game and really rush from left to right. And then you would start obsessing about this. And that's exactly what's happening at companies. They're caught into that move of rushing from one side to another, a little bit like headless chickens, and obsessing on volumes and costs. And they forget the value that this volume represents. In the parachute game, the value was pretty clear. Each parachute you would save, you would get 1 point. Each parachute you would leave be eaten by sharks, you would be closer to lose the game. So in CX, and I am having a trouble with the chat coming my way. Sorry. This obsession on costs makes company look as customer service as a cost center. But if there's one message I want you to take from this talk, is that customer service is not so much as a cost center, it's an opportunity center. And I'm going to share with you what I mean by that. If you think about it, your agents talking to customers every day, they know about them. They know how customers talk to you. They can give you a lot of insights into their needs. They can also inform your product teams on priorities for your roadmap. they can boost sales because customers sometimes, or even prospects, reach out to customer service, not so much because they have an issue, but because they want to hear about products that they might want to purchase. And so those agents have that knowledge and that value that I can share with you, and that can help the business. The most important value that there is that human-to-human connection. That moment where you're talking and you're engaged with your customers is the moment where we can tell them how much you understand their needs, how much you care about them. This is a truly opportunity. But if we look at the reality of a customer service journey, very often it looks like this, right? It looks like a maze full of obstacles. You might start with interacting with a bot that maybe doesn't have an answer and cannot handle a clear escalation to a human agent. Maybe you might try, FAQs that might lead you to fill a form. And then maybe you get an answer by email that has a no reply email, so address email, so you cannot keep interacting. And then getting to find, a very well hidden phone number sometimes, traveling this IVR menu that sometimes is confusing and waiting for a long time. So I'm pretty sure you can recognize this obstacle course or maze from a customer point of view. You might have been one of those customers, and you might feel empathy for that customer at some point. You might also feel something maybe a little bit different. Maybe you feel a little bit, ashamed of having done some of those techniques, trying to deflect calls, hiding a phone number somewhere. But so, when this is the situation, what happens to that opportunity that I described, when the customer finally talks to the agents he was longing to talk to? Well, the opportunity doesn't exist anymore. It just got ruined by all the frustration and the negative emotion that has been overwhelming the customer through that journey. And worst of it is that, that value, the agent's value, their knowledge about the customer is very often ignored by CX team. They're not connected to product teams. They're not often connected to CX teams. So there's something that is lost in that process. Now, I mentioned a bit of technology in that maze. Let's just be clear. I'm not saying that technology is bad, right? But I'm just saying that it hurts when it's misused, and you should be careful about what's the role of technology in that journey. When we look at the data we collect, and we have, I think, a little bit more than 15 years of quantitative data on customer service and CX at Forrester, we know that customer service quality is a top driver of CX quality. And if we look into details on those top drivers for customer service quality, you can see that 2 of them are related to the human agent. The fact that you can solve someone's problem means you listen to him and you can answer questions. So that agent is crucial in that process. So that's for the quantitative aspect, but I wanted to give this a little bit more color and explore the qualitative aspects of what customer service that unlocks those great opportunities look like. And the great thing about this is that when customers have a nice experience, they tend to share them, and that's what I use to conduct this research. I'm going to share the story that a customer whose name Ian shared on LinkedIn. He was traveling with his family, and that was obviously prior to the pandemic situation. And he was waiting at the Charles de Gaulle airport in Paris to go back and take his flights back home with his wife and kids. And what happened is that his phone, he dropped his phone on a very narrow space between the chairs where he was seated, and he tries to retrieve his phone, but doesn't manage. He asks for help. Somebody tries to help him as well, but they still cannot retrieve Ian's phone. And so he left, leaving his phone behind and his contact details to take his plane back home. But you can imagine, and I'm going to just pause a little bit to let you imagine how Ian felt about leaving his phone behind. Our phones are so much more than just a device, right? They're full of memories and pictures and things that are probably not yet saved or backed up somewhere. So it was probably a very emotional situation. And he probably thought that he would not retrieve his phone. But guess what? He received actually an email from Etienne, the director of the customer service, who told him, hey, we managed to get your phone back. And with that note, there were pictures of the special hook that Etienne's team had to craft to be able to retrieve that phone. And so this story and the pictures of that hook is what Ian shared on LinkedIn to thank Etienne and his team for their outstanding customer service. And obviously, he got a lot of comments, and we made a big deep dive into more than 1,000 comments, looking at them one by one to try to understand what people are saying that make those wow factors. And overall, we found 4 main clusters of comments. So we can call them the wow factor for amazing customer service. The first one were comments such as those. It was about culture and mindset, customer centricity at its best, or leadership is what happens when you empower your teams and establish a culture of service. The second group was around the process, so the process it took to solve that problem. Lots of MacGyver references, lots of duct tape references in those comments. The third group was around the human touch. And those comments were the ones that were the more emotionally charged. Comments telling you this makes the world a better place to live. Highlighting amazing little acts of kindness, or how it's refreshing when you experience people who really care. And there were a particular set of comments in that human touch group that we call the going the extra mile. Those comments were mentioning this particular aspect to that human touch, being dedicated beyond the expectation or beyond the job needs, helping others. So to give you a sense of the, so if we represent, although those little squares are the comments that we looked at, and you can see that the culture and mindset represents 19% of the comments. 21% were highlighting the process to solve the problem as one of the wow factors, and the human touch represents 60% of those, with the going the extra mile that you can see here at 38% of them. So you can think about how can can you take this and can this be actionable? And I'm going to share with you a few examples coming from companies that are actually already using those wow factors at customer service. The first one around culture and mindset, this is a picture of an NPS wall that I found at a company WebAuth who's providing customer service for clients. And they go weekly through the feedback they get from their customers and put on that NPS wall the ones that are the most positive ones, the ones that are thanking agents for a good answer, for being helpful. They sometimes post as well letters that they receive, letters that sometimes are addressed to the CEO of the companies they're providing customer service for, thanking them for an outstanding service. So WebHelp understood that their agents are proud of the work they're doing. They want to do a good job, and making this visible is really helping them to cultivate that culture service mindset. Now about the process, if you think about a process that took a little bit of time, you know how we all hate being kept in the dark. When something takes some time, you need to know that there's something moving forward, that there's some progress in the process. And AirHelp is an example of a company who understand that well. When you start a claim because, for instance, your flight got delayed or canceled, they first send you an email telling you, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is going to be the next step in the process. We're going to take care of the paperwork for you. Then we'll wait for a decision, but we will make sure to keep you updated every step of the way. And they actually do. I keep receiving emails every 2 weeks, and this is still not solved, but I'm still updated on what is happening, and I'm sure that every 2 weeks I get an update regularly. So I know that things are moving forward. Now, what about the human touch? The human touch is something that the supermarket Jumbo has found a way to deliver. They have this concept in the Netherlands that they call the kletskassa. So you could translate that as the chatty checkout. They realize that as a supermarket, they have some kind of like social role in the community. And some people like to take some time to just have an interaction, a quick chat with a person, particularly, for instance, elderly people. And so they open those chatty checkouts, cash registers, where it's okay to take your time. This is the cash register where you can, while the cashier is taking your groceries and processing your checkout, you can have a quick conversation. And nobody is going to tell you to go faster or to rush. If you're in a rush, you can pick another cash register. But if you want to take your time, you can, and you can have a nice conversation. Now, you might think, what about the extra mile? How much is this going to cost you? What's the budget for the extra mile? Well, here's an example that is coming from DVS that I think is very inspiring. When and that's what's happening when a customer calls because he needs to get a new credit card. The first question that the agent is going to ask the customer calling because of a credit card lost or stole is not what your name, is not what your account number, what's your details. It's, are you safe? Are you safe? That's the first question they ask because they recognize that you might be calling, if somebody just stole your wallet, you might be in an emotional distress. And that's very important. This is a first step in that human touch. Obviously, the agent will then guide the customer through the process of getting that new card. But he's not going to stop there. He's going to take some time to close the conversation, offering a list of other useful numbers to the customer. Maybe he also lost his driving license. Maybe he also lost cards or payment cards from other banks, and he might need some help to find the phone number to reach out to those services. So that's how the customer service at DBS closes the conversation, going that extra step, helping customers with the next step. So how can you seize the human customer service opportunity back in your companies? Well, the first thing you can do is to mine your CSR's knowledge. Look at your voice of customer program, look at your feedback forums, look for insights on what, those bright spots, what customers appreciate that you do for them, what specific gesture they enjoyed when they interacted with your agents. And also get in touch with your agents to understand what they can tell you about those customers that might not be visible in those feedback forms. And invite them to, revisit your customer service journeys. You need to look at that big maze, if there's a maze existing, or that obstacle course, to highlight where are some pain points for the customers, but that will also reflect in making the job hard for your agents. And then finally, infuse kindness and humanity. You saw in those examples that I shared that providing that human touch, going the extra mile, is all about kindness and all about humanity, understanding the human you're interacting with. So you can do what is right for your customers, what's right for your agents, and obviously is going to be right for your business, just making room for that human-to-human connection. Thank you for your attention. I think we can fire up the second little poll so we can then move into the Q&A session. So I'm just curious in that second question to know how regularly your customer service leaders and your CX pros are collaborating in your organization. And Samuel, I'm going to leave it to you to close the poll when there are enough respondents. Great, thank you. Well, this is pretty good actually, to see that there's a very regular and a continuous collaboration. I'm pretty happy to see that, and I hope that the ones who are not in that very regular collaboration will be inspired today to get this a little bit more regular. So let me take a look at the Q&A to see the questions that are coming our way. So can I share any metrics or anecdotes that connect CX enhancement to business performance? How would you suggest organizations go about crafting a business case for investment? So I think the question of metrics is a really important one, and it's one that is very relevant for that shift between, are we looking at customer service through the lens of a budgeting line, or are we also looking at it through the lens of the CX benefits and the business benefits? And I think talking with different teams, the most performing ones, the ones that were most connected with the product teams, that were a little bit more advanced and more mature in their practice, had changed their metrics to measure the agent's performance, for instance. So they were not using so much the average handle time metric as a holy grail. They were shifting towards things that were first call resolution metrics. So shifting away from, and again, an idea of volume and costs to an idea of more quality delivered. So I think the choice of metrics that you're using to measure your employees, your agents' performance will have an impact on how well you can leverage that opportunity or not. So it's definitely a thing to pay attention to. And if you want to connect those metrics together, well, you will need to be collaborating with your CX teams to see how you can track the impact of your service into the next steps. how this answers that first question. I'm going to look at the second one. Should we be selective on which contact type? Oh, sorry. Should we be selective on which contact type should be handled by different channels, more complex cases to call operational centers? Yes, so, but I'm curious to hear as well, and I'm pretty sure we will have in today and next and tomorrow stories shared by companies who might have seen some shifts here with what's coming to their contact center. Definitely there's a moment, I think, when things or requests are more complex, where does this need to talk to a human? So things are pretty simple, or questions that are pretty simple can be handled by some automated service or maybe self-service things. And we actually see how agents with the past years where everybody rushed into implementing chatbots, trying to deflect calls this way, we saw how agents would get more and more and more complex calls. So that did not make their life that much easier at some point, and I'm very glad to see that now companies are investing as well in agent-facing solutions to help them there. So it's I think a natural move to want to talk to a human when you're in a more complex case, or maybe a case in which there's a bit more emotional distress or emotional charge to it. And so using other channels to answer simple questions. Now, it's not that easy to drive customers where you want them to go, because this is really about a personal context and the reason why they're calling you. So I think the guiding principle here should be to try to offer a range of channels your customers can pick from based on their preference, but handle very well how you can move from one channel to another one, avoiding having to repeat your question, repeat yourself, and re-explain why you're calling.
Sure.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you. No, thank you. I think these are very insightful answers, and I think the questions are relevant. Even though I see only 4 likes, I think most of the audience will accept that this is an important issue. It's not only figuring out that value is important, but also how we operationalize it and how we manage to convince the rest of the organization that this is a priority.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So I don't see the time, but I think we still have some time for next question. If we know the categories that drive wow interactions, what are the training and capabilities required to embed that in service centers? Right. I think that's a very important one. But so one thing to just clarify, you saw the 3 drivers of CX quality. So answering all your questions, answering them in a timely manner, and offering the ability for your agents to answer them are those 3 main ones. First, you should focus on doing that. I mean, that is something you have to do because that's only when you can do that you can go to the outstanding level, I would think. Now, what it requires from your agents, it definitely requires, I think, emotional intelligence training. It's very hard to listen to people really actively, really listening and understanding, and be empathic. Oh, sorry, have this empathy that you need to address a customer questions. And that's not. I mean, some people might be more naturally gifted for it. But there are some situations where you definitely need some more training and some more support, particularly if you're handling things like claims or things that are a little bit on the conflicting side. It's very, very hard to handle those well. So discussing with customer service leaders and asking them about how they recruit and what they're looking for in talents, they definitely saw a shift from only knowing technical knowledge, knowing about your service, your products, and your operations, to a more balanced profile where people would have this emotional connection, emotional intelligence, because it's easier to fill the gaps in the product knowledge and process knowledge than maybe it is to train and to upskill someone on that emotional aspect. So providing training and support on that capability, how to listen, how to take the other in consideration, how to understand what's happening in your brain when you're in stress, will help your agents to do a better job. Do we have time for one more question?
I don't think so, but let's keep it open and maybe shoot later an email. I think sure. I'm getting signal, Sam. I think we're out of time. Okay, so thank you very much. I think it's very insightful and very important, and these are things that we need to be saying. That this matters. It's not about average handling time only. It's not about volume. It's about value. Thank you very much, Karine.
Thank you for inviting me today.
Typically, there would be clapping. I'm the only one that's clapping.
That's fine.
Thank you.